Hello upgraders and welcome to another really exciting episode of the Upgraded Ape Show. I'm your host Will Barron and today we have Steve Fowkes who's going to blow minds once again. Today the focus is on nanotechnology and how it will upgrade your brain and upgrade countless parts of our lives, and there's applications for it that we haven't even thought of or imagined yet. We also touch on all sorts. We touch on whether mobile phone EMFs or cell phone EMFs do any damage to your brain, and the conclusion of that is that the 1% of the 1% might actually have a real issue with it. And just before we get into the show, our sponsor today is the Upgraded Ape Store, where you can find high-performance coffee, the Genius Complete Liquid Nootropic, our high-strength vitamin D, which is literally the highest quality vitamin D I can find on the whole of the planet. We've got Arctic Krill Oil, Alpha Brain, Siltep, Prescript Assist, all sorts. We ship to the UK and Europe, and we offer a full money-back guarantee if you do not feel that the products have either upgraded your brain or doubled your productivity. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the show.
Welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show, your daily dose of brain upgrades to help you kick life's ass. And here's your host, Will Barron.
Hi Steve, and welcome back onto the Upgraded Ape Show.
Thank you. This will be fun again.
Well, mate, I'm really excited to dive into the world of technology, nanotechnology, and kind of what we hinted at the end of the previous show.
Okay, fire away.
So at the end of the previous show, just to tie it all together so people could listen to these back to back, we touched on using Google Glass to improve some aspects of the brain. And the example we used was remembering names. And a couple of people have commented on that and emailed me, and a lot of people have said that they don't ever think Google Glass could ever take off as a technology, and this is potentially true for a broader spectrum of technologies because it's so invasive on your face, and at the moment, because everyone doesn't have it, it looks a bit silly. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that Google Glass, just particularly as a technology, could take off in the future and be more universal?
That's an easy one. I mean, given, for example, what's happened with computers and the fact that, you know, that the average cell phone today, which fits in your pocket, has more computing power than a living room sized computer did back when computers were first built. The same argument would have been made at that time, and there's no reason why optical systems couldn't be 1,000 times smaller than your eye. And that if there's some kind of specific low power kind of powering system to run it, where it's literally transparent and passive, for example, potentially feeding off of the energy of your own body. Those are technologies that will come along in the next 20 years. So those kinds of objections won't be realistic at that particular point in time. The question comes down to, I think, the question to the answer of the drive for this. What will this mean to people? And if you take an average person with a smartphone today, what would happen to them if they had to give it up? If we realized that the EMF effects were completely toxic and that it would be $1,000 per phone per month in order to pay the costs, negative health costs of this, and people would give it up. What would they do? And they would be completely dysfunctional.
Do you think that the EMFs from phones are dangerous? This is something that's brought up that I've never heard anyone give a succinct and answer that hasn't been a bit hippie and woo-woo, basically.
Well, I think there's no question that the particular frequencies that they've chosen are harmful to people, but only about 1 in 100 people are sensitive enough to demonstrate a physiological reaction that's fairly subtle, and probably only 1 out of 100 of those have debilitating effects from cell phone radiation. The particular frequency couples into people very, very nicely. So, as a matter of fact, there's an inventor that I've met who invented what I call the butterfly antenna for cell phones that is directional. Instead of it being spherical, which encompasses your head, it's shaped like a figure eight, so it's linear in one particular direction. This is created by an interference pattern. And so instead of having this spherical broadcasting thing that takes place around your head, where your head's embedded in it, you have this lobe that sticks out in front of you and behind you, and so your head sits in a node, a quiet node. And this actually gives about 5% longer battery life, because the energy that would be absorbed by your brain is now no longer wasted.
Wow, that's going to be one rich inventor if he can sell that to or pay, license that to Microsoft or someone like that.
Well, they won't touch him with a 10-foot pole, because there would be an implication that existing cell phones are dangerous, and they won't allow that precedent.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've heard before that it can mess with your DNA, it can do all kinds of things, but as I said, I've not had anyone, that's the most succinct version of the science that I've heard.
Yeah, that's just looking at it from a caloric point of view, how much energy is actually going into your head. If you look at medical findings regarding cancer, brain cancers tend to occur more on the side of that people use their cell phone than on the other side. So there's other evidence like that points to the harmful effects. So if you have a cell phone and you're committed to using a cell phone, use the remote technologies that allow you, like Bluetooth, that allow you to connect to your device and keep it away from your body, keep it away from your head especially.
And should we be concerned about Wi-Fi and other EMFs as well, while we've touched on this subject?
Yeah, they're low-level influences, but the cell phones are broadcast devices, and therefore the power that they put out is proportional to the distance between the phone and the tower that's picking up their signal. When you're dealing with the reverse technology, where the information is being broadcast from let's say a Wi-Fi hub to a device, by the time that signal gets to the device, it's been diluted by distance, and so that's like getting damp instead of drowning in an ocean.
And just one final one on this, because as I said, we weren't planning on talking about this, but it's interesting to me. People, and I've seen online, you can buy like crystals and other kind of things that you stick on your phone, and apparently they dissipate the EMFs and the microwave frequencies. Are they a real thing? Do they actually help at all?
No idea. It doesn't make any sense to me. It kind of sounds woo-woo to me. If they were to absorb frequencies, they would interfere with the cell phone getting to the tower and things like that, and that would just cause the cell phone to increase its power output to compensate, and that turns out to be a huge issue. So if you're in a metal box like an airplane or in a car, it could be useful to actually turn off your phone, put your phone in airplane mode so that it doesn't continue to try to connect with the tower, because when you're far from a tower, the power output of your cell phone is huge, and not only will that drain your battery, but that means it's coupling, all that energy is coupling into your body.
Well, let's go back to technology now and the future of technology, and let's look a little bit further and deeper than Google Glass. Can you tell us a little bit about nanotechnology, and can you tell us a little bit about its applications?
I'm a firm believer that nanotechnology will, dramatically change things. I think the most powerful technology that we have on the planet today is biotechnology, actually biology, and that's actually nanotechnology. The devices that living systems use, enzymes and proteins are nanoscale devices, and they do a very good job of enabling all the life that we see around us, including us. And the fact that human beings can live for 100 years and maintain some degree of structural repair is a phenomenal achievement in terms of looking at any kind of technology, whatever standard you might want to use. So when we actually can translate biotechnologies into non-biological kinds of scales, we have the potential of increasing the density of performance by at least a factor of 10 and possibly a factor of 100, which means that we can make things that do things that biology does that are, a tenth the size or possibly 100th the size. And that means that we could conceivably put arrays in our retinas that would enable a different kind of visual acuity, or that we could build eye enhancements that would allow us to instantly change our eye focus. We could potentially put devices that would project images on our retinas, could put them inside the eye and project them on the retina so that we could see something superimposed on our view of the world, kind of like we had a transparent window projection screen in front of us that we could see images on and then look through it at the rest of the world around us. Those kinds of things would be movie level fantasy technology, and I think it's all achievable.
And how far away would something like that be? So that is essentially Google Glass without Google Glass, isn't it?
That's right. And I would. The history of projecting technologies like that is woefully bad, but I would say it's well beyond 20 years.
Okay. Well, that's a lot further than I was expecting. Unfortunately.
it's the organization of the scale. To build a single element that would fit into the retina, I think that could be well less than 10 years away. But to integrate it into a whole system, I think, is a lot longer time frame.
I see. So you'd need things like mobile phones to evolve into something else, which would then evolve gradually and push the whole of the technology smaller and smaller.
Yeah. So I'm working on a nanotechnology project right now that involves nanostructural self-assembly, where two monomers come together to form a linkage, and then that linkage adopts a single conformation. In other words, it's like puzzle pieces locking together, where the backbone of the polymer is rigid or is self-conforming. It has only one posture. Doing that in a linear configuration is a relatively simple process. That's what biology does with amino acids, only the string of amino acids don't interact by nearest neighbors. They interact at a distance. So one amino acid will interact with amino acid 5 amino acids down the road, or 10 amino acids, or 100 down the road, whereas the system I'm working on, it'll be nothing but adjacent interactions, neighbor-to-neighbor interactions. But to build a big system, to build an array, requires all kinds of complicated stuff that isn't just near neighbor stuff, and so that's not so simple. And so scaling up from a linear structure to a three-dimensional structure is a huge research problem.
If you could get it into a three-dimensional structure, what would be a kind of application for this?
Solids that are lighter than air, that float in the air. We could have pores that only fit protons. So if you put electrical charge across it, where you have a proton gradient, you can generate electricity. You could have battery electrolytes, where the ions that move from one side to the other, the cations, the positive ions that move inside of a battery, don't have any resistance at all. So you could have, double the power storage in a battery system. And, ultra strong materials that are, potentially 5 times stronger than M5. These kinds of things are possible.
That's amazing. I know there's some other applications to nanotechnology, and one that just springs to mind is that, so I went to the University of Bangor and studied chemistry there. I was the worst chemistry student ever, but absolutely fascinating whilst there. One of the projects they were doing was building, when you looked at it, it was essentially a buggy that would get to a certain point within the body, open up and allow a drug to be released at a specific time.
Yeah.
Using like a chemical bond to time the release of it.
They also have magnetic released ones and radiation released ones, so that you can focus some kind of a magnetic signal or a radiation signal at a particular point in the body, and as the particles float into this space, they release the drug.
Amazing. So that would mean that, and I don't know anything about this, but going off the top of my head, you could use this to release cancer drugs and chemotherapy drugs into specific places, couldn't you? So then you not be messing up the whole body while you're trying to do these treatments.
Yeah. So, for example, we have epilepsy, where a particular part of the brain sends out a spurious signal and disrupts the entire brain areas around it. And it's kind of like, having somebody in a movie theater, screaming at the top of their lungs while you're trying to watch the movie. It's very dysfunctional. And so what people do now is they take anti-epileptic drugs orally, and this spreads throughout the entire body and quiets down this one little tiny part of the brain. But, that's a 100% of the size of the whole body. So you're having this massive collateral damage effect. Whereas if one can take these, nanostructures and build a nano-sized tube that would be the size of a capillary and run it from the outside of the body directly to that point in the brain, one could deliver a day's supply of drug over the course of one's lifetime and have no epilepsy and no liver problems.
Wow, that's even more amazing. I've never thought of using a tube to deliver things, because then you could be delivering things to certain parts of the brain to solve all kinds of problems, and also enhance things as well. It's at the push of a button, essentially.
Yeah, and the tube would be as small as a axon or dendrite, and would be flexible, so it would move. It wouldn't be rigid. It would flow with the body system. So if you were in an accident, it wouldn't be like this rigid thing would, tear part of your brain. So nobody has a clue about how to insert a tube like that. But I can imagine easily how once it's in place, it would work just fine.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll get to the point where nanotechnology will be small enough to do repairs specifically within the body.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know, repairing DNA or repairing, red blood cells or whatever it is.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. And I mentioned a 10-to-1 size difference between biological machinery and what it can do, and the potential of molecular nanomachines is 10-to-1 difference. And if we get atomic nanomachines, it's 100-to-1 difference.
Wow. In my head now, I've got this picture of a tiny submarine with little arms that goes around repairing and killing cancer cells and things like that. Is that what it looks like, or describe what the actual nanotechnology is and what it looks like?
Well, that's a great analogy. I have no idea what the actual effectors would be. If you had a DNA scanning machine, for example, that would scan through DNA and look for, let's say, herpes genomes that are spliced into your DNA. And an average cell in the human body, by the time you die, is about 6 of these per cell. So you're talking trillions of these herpes genomes that are in our bodies when we die. If you had a scanner that went through and recognized it and then just spliced it back out again and chopped it up into pieces, that wouldn't be that difficult to do mechanically, but the information storage system in the device would be a challenge. I mean, you'd have to recognize a herpes genome from a human genome so that one didn't splice out the wrong thing.
Well, perhaps there could be a way to use some kind of information transfer, or would it be too small to... How small can a chip get? Can a computer chip get small enough to be used within nanotechnology, or is that beyond the size of a chip?
No, I mean, I think chips are nanotechnology. They're just silicon and semiconductor-based nanotechnology instead of, organic molecules or living systems.
So are we likely to then see, if you can get a chip to do all these kind of things, well, there's 3 situations. 1, we all live amazing and happily, and without sounding too morbid. 2, there's all kinds of chemical warfare applications and things like that. Or there's the 3rd option is that you end up, a big corporation injects you with something, and then your healthcare and lifestyle and everything then belongs to them, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know.
Where the dangers with this? That's what I'm trying to get at, Steve.
I could just point out another direction to go, and that would have to do with modalities of dealing. Let's just say this is kind of what the SENS Foundation is doing, with looking at each of the different aspects of aging and developing technologies that intervene on each one of those. And if all we do is develop nanotechnology regarding sensors, which is relatively simple, and we're already doing that right now, and implanting the sensors so that we create data streams from individuals about their pH, their redox potential, the electrical patterns that their nervous system is doing, heart rate variability monitoring on a second-by-second basis, looking at the collagen maturation. To give an example, if we take that data stream, which is massive, and analyze it, we can start to see when specific aging mechanisms start to become problems and then go in and get them fixed. In the same way that we know the difference between when an engine in a car needs a tune-up or it needs a transmission job.
And then I guess we get into the world of big data, and there'd be that much information that we've never seen from that many people, that you'd see patterns and trends that would come to a whole bunch of new discoveries as well.
Yeah, so my favorite one that I'll sign up for right away is the ability to measure urine pH changes on a 5-second by 5-second basis. Every 5 seconds, telemeter out the pH that's coming out of the urine. This would mean planting a sensor somewhere beyond the kidney, beyond the bladder, so that that you don't have the dilution effect that would complicate the issue of measuring pH. I know that pH goes after issues like sleep quality and healing abilities and energy and performance during the day. There's a circadian rhythm to it. There's a effect that happens from what we eat, what we do, and just monitoring that would be a phenomenal benefit. Instead of looking at it, over the course of 3 or 4 hours, getting a data point every 3 to 4 hours, we can get it every 3 to 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm. And that, now, as you described it, didn't seem like that big of an ask to get something in the ureter. The ureter's, a couple of mil thick, that you could easily, I imagine now there's technology that would be able to monitor pH, which is a relatively simple process to monitor, and some kind of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth application to get the information out of the body.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't think most medical people appreciate the information content that is involved in regulating pH, and certainly they don't in terms of monitoring redox potential. But these are basic, physics level aspects of biology.
So would we be looking toward medical device companies to provide and develop these things, or is this something that Silicon Valley is likely to tackle in the future?
Well, I think Silicon Valley could do this. I think the first implementation would be, catheterization technology, because it's well established, and be able to put a sensor in place and get a week's worth of data before it became biologically fouled. That kind of stuff would show the value of collecting the pH data. Whether or not, that's the incentive to develop a portable system that would also be, in a sense, screened away from the immune system, and that would also resist things like bacterial mats and biofilms and stuff like that, so that it could be implanted for an extended period of time. But people are already developing that technology for, hearts and organs and implants and pacemakers and things like that. So this isn't, really futuristic technology from the point of view of requiring dozens and dozens of new inventions. It's really just, applying what's already known to that particular challenge.
Okay, so we've looked at what's potentially available now, what's going to be available in the near future potentially. What do you see out in the future? Where do you see us in 50 years with this kind of nanotechnology and the implementation of technology and the human body?
Oh, I think we're talking about virtual immortality. I mean, the living long enough that your primary risk of death is an accident.
And is this the kind of... So we had Aubrey de Grey on from SENS, and he talked about people will live to the first generation of all these tools and protocols and that come in, which then will give them 20, 30 years, which then will allow them to get to the second generation and third generation.
Yes.
Do you think that there's going to be a generational approach to this, or do you think there's just going to be one killer application or killer device that's going to essentially solve the problem of aging?
I think it's going to be generational. I agree with him.
That's awesome. It's really interesting. It's something that, I don't know, I said this to Aubrey, that, if you're going to die, likely because of aging, and so your friends and your family, why aren't more people working on this, Steve? Why isn't this at the top priority list of every medical device company and big corporation and organization and people who have got money to throw at it? Why are they not throwing money at this specific problem of aging?
Well, they are. I mean, you have the funding of the Buck Foundation, which is oriented towards anti-aging, but it doesn't. There isn't enough imagination to see how close this really is. And it's probably the best model to understand this is Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolutions, where they talk about innovators versus early adopters, and this whole issue that 1/10 of the population do the innovation, and then you've got 1% of the population that will pick up on that, and then 4% will pick up on it, and then 20% will pick up on it, and it takes generations for it to spread from the first people to everybody.
Just out of interest, does that cycle get shorter and shorter, or is that a set cycle so you can potentially use that to predict forward?
I think it's a set cycle. It has to do with the psychology of people, the orientation of people, and you have people who are not risk averse, and you've got people that are very risk averse, and those people who are risk averse won't do something until everybody else is doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Steve, I think that's a great way to end the show and wrap this one up. And yeah, we've covered some ground again here that I wasn't expecting to go. I know the listeners are going to really enjoy it. So yeah, thanks again for your time, and thanks for coming on the Upgraded Ape Show. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more and just go over your company and where we can find out more about you?
Just type my name into a search engine and you'll get 1,000 hits. I may not be very, very well known, but I've been doing nutrition and aging investigations for 4 decades. So there's a lot of paper trail there to dig into. Also the nanopolymer systems, you can go and check out the kind of work we're doing there. Just explains the basic technology and how we hope to achieve the first level of a nanomachine universe by building molecular nanomachines. And then those molecular nanomachines hopefully would be able to build molecular nanomachines, or atomic nanomachines.
Amazing stuff. Well, Steve, you've got me asking myself more questions than answers that I'd got out of the show. So, yeah, we'll have you on again. And, thanks again for your time today.
Okay, you're welcome. Talk to you soon.